Okay, yesterday we learned how to identify the axis of symmetry and the vertex from a parabola. So like, for example, if I had y equals x squared plus 3x minus 5, then we learned that that vertex is this low point. Now in this particular case, it's a decimal because I just typed the equation in here. And that the axis of symmetry would be the vertical line that goes through that point. So today what we're going to learn how to do is find this from an equation rather than the graph, because sometimes the graph may not be given to us. So to find the axis of symmetry, we are going to use the formula x equals negative b over 2a. And whenever I use that a and b, that is assuming that the parabola is in standard form. Standard form looks like this: y equals ax squared, here, where'd it go? Plus bx plus c. So a is the number that goes with your x squared term, b is the number that goes with your x term, and c is the constant. So we don't use c at all for our axis of symmetry. So if I use that for this problem that I have over here, I've got, let's see, I'm going to copy and paste this. We'll call this one example 1. I've got, over here, I've got x squared plus 3x minus 5. So if I want to find the axis of symmetry for this equation, then my a value right here is 1, because there's no number in front of the x squared, so there would be a 1 right there. My b value is 3. So my axis of symmetry is going to be at x equals negative b, so negative 3 over 2 times a, which is 1. And so in this case, I'd get negative 3 over 2, or I could write that as x equals negative 1.5. If I go over here to Desmos and I graph that, x equals negative 1.5, we can see that is our axis of symmetry right here. Okay, so that is how we find our axis of symmetry, negative b over 2a, or at least one way. The other thing that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to find the vertex. So to find the vertex, first thing we're going to do is find the axis of symmetry. So if we're using that problem that we just did, x equals negative 1.5 in this particular case. The second thing we're going to do is plug in the x value into the function to find the y value. So anytime we want to know any point on the graph, like if I want to know the point up here where x is 1, oh, that's 2. I want to know where x is 2. I'm having a hard time getting actually there, but you can see close by there. If I'm looking for that point where x is 2, I could just plug that value into the formula. This is not very easy to see here. So in this particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that negative 1.5 I just found, and I'm going to plug it into the equation. So I'm going to say y equals 1.5 squared plus 3 times 1.5 minus 5. And so if I type that in to Desmos, I'm going to have 1.5 squared plus 3 times 1.5 minus 5, and that gives me 1.75. So the x coordinate, oops, I've messed up because that should be negative right there. Let's make that negative 1.5. Let's go over here to Desmos. And let's make this negative 1.5. Both of those. Actually, we should get negative 7.25. So my x-coordinate is negative 1.5. My y-coordinate is negative 7.25 for that. So, let's continue on and do a couple more here. So, let's say that we have the equation, we'll call this example 2. Let's say that we have the equation y equals 2x squared minus 6x plus 3. Okay, so that's our equation of our parabola. And so, hold on just a second. This problem, I'm going to show you how to find the axis of symmetry and the vertex. In your assignment, it's only going to ask you for one or the other, but you need to be able to find both for all problems. So we'll just use this problem to find both. So axis of symmetry always comes first, and that is our x equals negative b over 2a. And in this case, our a is 2, and our b is going to be negative 6. Make sure you keep that negative with that 6. So our axis of symmetry is going to be negative 6. So opposite of b, it's going to be negative 6 over 2 times 2. And so negative times negative gives us positive 6 over 4. And we could reduce that to 3 over 2. And I did not mean to create another problem that has 1.5 there. But hold on just a second, Henry.
My password.
Hold on just a second. Oh, I didn't mean to do that.
Hey.
Where'd my video go, Henry? Sorry, guys.
Put on.
Where is the recording? Alright, so sorry about that. So our axis of symmetry would be x equals 1.5. Make sure you put that x equals. When you go to Desmos, not Desmos, Delta Math, it's going to ask you find the equation of this axis of symmetry of the following parabola. You have to type in x equals the number. If you don't type in that x equals, it's not going to count it correct because it's not the equation of a line. So axis of symmetry, you would type in x equals 1.5. Now, if we also want to find the vertex, then all we have to do here is plug 1.5 into our equation. So in this case, we would do 2 times 1.5 squared minus 6 times 1.5 plus 3, and it is fine with me if you use your calculator to do that. So I'm going to go over here to Desmos and just type that in. And we'll get negative 1.5. Alright, so our vertex for this problem would be at 1.5, negative 1.5. There. Alright, let's do one more problem together just so you've got the hang of this. Let's say that our third example is going to be y equals 8 minus 3x plus 3x squared. Alright, now, I wrote this one a little bit different on purpose because we have to remember what our a, b, and c values are. So the a is the number that's next to our x squared. So our a value is positive 3. our b value here is going to be next to the x. So it is negative 3. So when we do x equals our negative b over 2a, we are going to do negative 3 over 2 times 3. And so here we will get positive 3 over positive 6, which gives us 1/2 or 0.5 if we want to use that here. So our axis of symmetry, I'm going to abbreviate this to AOS. It's fine with me if you do that. It is going to be x equals 1/2, or you could type in x equals 0.5. I'm not sure which one you have to do on Delta Math. I haven't ran across a decimal one yet as I was doing problems, but you can just play with that a little bit and see. Now, if it doesn't ask us for axis of symmetry, if it asks us for the vertex, then we are going to have to take that 0.5 and plug it into the equation. So our equation up here is 8 minus 3 times x, so it'll be 8 minus 3 times 1/2 plus 3 times 1/2 squared. And so if we go over here to Desmos and type that in, 8 minus 3 times 0.5 plus 3 times 0.5 to the second, we're going to get 7.25. The same numbers keep showing up here over and over again. That's just a coincidence. So our vertex for this parabola would be at 0.5, and our y-coordinate is 7.25. Okay, so those are the two things that you'll be asked for on your Delta Math assignment. So just read carefully. So like here, whenever it says find the equation of the axis of symmetry of the following parabola. So you would do negative 16 over 2 times 1. So that'll be positive 16 over 2, which will give you 8. So if you check, you'll type in x equals 8. Yes, that is correct. It'll give you another problem. This time it says write the coordinates of the vertex of the following parabola. Write your answer as a point. Oh, I'm glad I clicked on this. Look at this one right here. We've got y equals negative x squared minus 7. Now this is a problem because we are missing our b value. We don't have an x there. So what we've got to do for this one is we've got to pretend that we've got a plus 0x right here. Sorry, I need to cut that off. And then minus 7. So our b value here is 0. If you're missing that middle term, your b value is 0, and your a is going to be negative 1. So your axis of symmetry is going to be x equals negative 0 over 2 times negative 1. That's going to give you 0 over negative 2, and 0 divided by anything except for 0 is 0. So your axis of symmetry here is 0. And then to find, so axis of symmetry is at x equals 0, but it does not ask for that. It asks for the vertex. So to find the vertex, you would do y equals negative 0 squared minus 7, which is going to give you negative 7. So your coordinates for your vertex would be 0, negative 7. You'll see if you graph this, this is actually also the y-intercept for that particular graph. And so that's what it will be looking for. Make sure you pay attention whether it's saying axis of symmetry or vertex, and answer those questions for me.